Now, one thing we have not touched upon on the whole radio station is heating. And of course, we've been hearing in the news about all the storms, the temperatures are dropping at the moment. But is there a cleaner and greener way to heat your church? Well, I'm joined here by Chris Dunphy, who is the founder of Church Eco Miser. Now, hi, Chris, first of all, and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, I want to really absorb your experience here because without giving your age away, you've been working in heating, whether it's central heating in the home or eco heating, for the last 40 or so years, you said.
Correct. Absolutely.
So I imagine over this time, you've seen a lot of changes.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And just to underline that, I think I've been doing churches exclusively since about 1980, something like that. In fact, if I remember rightly, we put the heating in St. John's Cathedral in Salford in 1980. So I have been about a bit. And church heating has changed dramatically. I mean, if you look back from the early days, we started getting heating in churches around about 1850, 1860, the old solid fuel systems. They were massively inefficient because they were systems of cast iron pipework that had a lot of water in them. And that was because in that day and age, you couldn't turn the boiler on or off. You know, it was on and it ran because there were no electrics to the boiler. And as we moved through times, things have changed immensely with switching to oil and gas and all the various things in between. But nowadays, it's more important than ever that we have to look after the planet, and we've got to cut all the carbon out. So about 10 years ago, I decided that we would look at a greener way of doing this. And greener way really means electricity in any of its forms. And I sold my heating business back in probably about 4 or 5 years ago, to concentrate on something that had already been developing. And now we're looking at systems that were once sort of 20% efficient, now 100% efficient. Wow. We're looking at systems that have no NOx emissions, no carbon dioxide. The greener, the cleaner. And also you've got an added bonus of the virtually maintenance free as well.
So just for a person like me, I know nothing about central heating. I literally, it is in the office here a running joke because the only thing I know is one button, and that is how to turn the radiator on. But I did have an attempt the other week of repressuring the boiler, which I managed to do. And I also have a strange obsession with bleeding radiators, both at home.
That's why you need to repressure it.
Exactly. They tend to go hand in hand, don't they, really?
They do, yeah.
But I don't understand how you can heat, because we saw you at CRE and you had this incredible piece of kit, which was like, it was a transparent radiator to show what's inside it.
Yeah.
And am I right in thinking that there was no liquid running through the radiator? It was a different heating system completely.
Yes, you're right there. That had a solid clay core in it, something similar to the old storage radiators. And what happens is you warm the block up and the block retains the heat. So if you like, you get more bang for your buck because it's retaining heat in it. But we also, as well as radiator systems, we also do a second system, which is an infrared system, which I think a lot of churches are now leaning towards. The difference being, if you've got a radiator system like you have in your office, you have in your house, that it warms the fabric of the building. Now, as you know, a lot of these churches are very big. And the benefit of an infrared system is that it doesn't need to heat the building. It tends to heat the people. Now, it's not saying that one's right and one's wrong. There's a marketplace for both of them. If you've got a building that's in regular use and it's got a lot of historic artifacts and wall paintings, then it's important that you warm the fabric of the building because you don't want any moisture or changes in humidity that will affect those.
So I will have to pick you up on that because I've never heard of that before. Infrared central heating. The only thing I can, I guess, use from my experience is I went once to a very posh spa and they actually had this infrared sauna type thing.
Yeah.
Is that a similar situation where it sort of warms your bones in a way?
Yeah, if you've ever been for a night out in the city centre, you'll sometimes, if you sat outside a bar, you'll see these
Yeah.
glowing red, and you sit in it and feel, oh, it's lovely and warm, even though you're outside in the cold. You can feel the warmth of the heater. That is an infrared heater. Our infrareds are different in so much as they don't glow, because you don't want a church to look like Old Trafford when you put the heat on.
So how does it work then? If you can't visually see it, how's the infrared going out from the radiator
Well,
to the person?
it's what they call far infrared. It's the frequency of the infrared that you can do it without it glowing. But basically, if you imagine a radiator that has a lot more heat, I mean, a normal domestic radiator you have in your house is sort of around about 70 degrees centigrade. An infrared can be anything to between 350 and 500 degrees centigrade. So there's a lot more heat coming down. The difference with the infrared is it doesn't heat the earth. That's why it's so successful outside a pub on a cold winter's night. And that allows you, when you're looking at it in a church environment, there's no need to preheat the building. Whereas normally a radiator system, you'd probably, on one of our systems, you'd preheat it by about an hour. On the old cast iron ones, you'd preheat it by about 3 days. But on an infrared, you just need to warm the heater up. So switch it on 10 minutes, you're good to go.
And just to pick up on that as well,
yeah.
The old system that you said it takes about 3 days, literally our church, the vicar, Tim, he has to put the heating on, I think sometimes on a Friday evening when the worship band practice, in order to have it warm on Sunday. Now, that can't be efficient, can it?
No, it's not. I mean, when you look at it, I mean, if you pull it, it'll be an old Victorian system being adapted and changed. And it's like I said, the old Victorian systems had this very high water content out of necessity because you'd no thermostats on the boiler, no controls on it at all. But to be fair, back in the day, that system would have probably gone on in September and it would have run all the way through to Easter. And efficiency wasn't really a thing.
A problem. The
No.
environment, who used to care about that?
Well, no, somebody would shove another shovel of coal on it, and quite often you'd find some local industrialist who were giving his coal to the church to buy his way to heaven, as they did back in the Victorian period.
Yeah.
Easiest conscience for all the child labour in his factory.
I never thought about things like that. So I guess one of the problems we face now is the rising cost of energy.
Yes.
Which is why this has come about. If the cost of energy wasn't a problem, you would have your heating on at church, at work. You'd have it on all the time, wouldn't you, really?
You would. And it's not just the energy now as well. It's the emissions as well that's very, very important. So what you've got to do is use as little energy as you can and make what you use efficient. As I say, that system at your church, if you look at it, it's probably only about 25% efficient. So for every pound's worth of gas or oil that you buy, you're only going to get 25 pence worth of heat. If you go to an electric system, then you get 100% of it. For every pound of electricity you buy, you get a pound's worth of heat. And that is very, very important.
Which I guess the next question is the cost of a new heating system, because we hear a lot, don't we, about churches having to raise funds because the lead's been stolen off the roof and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we don't often hear, or at least I haven't, churches having to do fundraising because they need a new heating system.
I hear it all the time.
That's your industry. So how much... I know it's almost a case of how long's a piece of string because it rests on the size of the building and the age of the building. But if there's church leaders listening to the show right now
Yeah.
And there are a lot of them, and they're thinking, do you know what? This sounds great.
Yeah.
What sort of cost are we looking at for that transition from the old system into something which is a lot better for the pocket in the long term?
I would say it is very, very
Mm.
difficult. I would say that you're probably looking at less um, for an electric system installed. If you've got the power there, probably about 60% the cost of a new gas system. That's probably
Okay.
the best way I can put it. I've just picked an order up this week, I think, for a grade one listed building down in the Oxford diocese. And that they had quite a quote of £70,000 off another company. It's come in at less than £30,000.
Wow. That's
You
a
know,
big, that's a huge saving.
absolutely. And not only that, a thing that a lot of your listeners might not know about, and the Church of England have just announced that they're awarding grants to churches to go to an electric system. And what they're doing, they're paying the difference, and it might vary from diocese to diocese. So, and I know you go out nationally, but I've got two churches now whereby if they'd have replaced the existing gas boiler or oil boiler, it would have cost them around about £10,000. And to put a new electric system in complete, it's costing them just under £30,000. What they've done is they've granted the difference.
Mhm.
So they've got a grant of about £20,000 basically. And that I haven't got the name of it. I did have it written down, but if you have a look on the Church of England's website, it might not be even up there yet. But it's something like the green hardship event. Something.
Okay.
I must get the
That's
full.
really interesting, though, because one of the things that will be holding churches back
Yeah,
is the large investment at the start.
yeah,
I know it makes sense in the long run
yeah,
because you'll be saving money, but it's like anything, isn't it? So, um, solar powered things like solar panels on the roof, it's a big expense at the start, but then it pays for itself. And it's like that with heating, isn't it? But you do need to think if you're a church leader, you will not be getting people in your congregation if it's cold,
correct.
because I genuinely find it hard when you go to a church and it's freezing cold. You can't concentrate. You're literally there shivering. They say, right, open up your Bibles, and you're like, I can't
Yeah,
because my hands are so cold. I can't turn the pages. It is a really important thing when you're greeting people to the church. It's a bit like having nice tea and coffee, isn't it? Really?
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, people will, with the best intentions in the world, they're not going to go to a cold church in winter if they've got other problems. You know, they might not be as mobile as they used to be, and nobody wants to sit in the cold church for a couple of hours, unless, of course, you call it the penitence church, and
Yeah, punishing the congregation.
yeah. Uh, uh,
Um, Really, really interesting stuff, this, Chris. And the great thing is that you are a person who's got many years' experience in this. So I want to put it out there to our listeners right now that if you go to the website, which is churchecomiser.co.uk, Church Eco Miser. In fact, I just searched on Google Eco Miser and it came up. Then get in touch with Chris and his team, and I'm sure that you'd be more than willing to offer advice and come over and have a look at some of these churches, because you do tend to travel quite a distance, don't you?
I do indeed. Next week, I think I'm down in the West Country, as far down as Plymouth, and we do. I mean, I put the eating in at Aberdeen Cathedral, and
Right.
you know, I travel about a fair bit, and it's great. I enjoy it. I love doing it, and it's amazing. Some of the things you see. I have a cathedral at the moment that I've been talking to, and it's a fair big one. It's a Catholic cathedral. They are paying over £10,000 a month in gas, and we have quoted them for an electric system that only costs £38,000 in the cathedral. And I mean, 5 months, and they're in profit.
So, out of interest then, Chris, tell us, if they're paying £10,000 a month in gas,
Yeah.
how much roughly will they be paying a month in electricity when they've got this new system? Roughly.
Roughly.
Always got the calculator out,
No,
ladies
I'm
and
sorry,
gentlemen.
Nick. I thought I wish I'd have said that because I've not got it. But bear with me. They would be paying about £15 an hour for the time that it was running. So basically, if you say you had it on for 4 hours on a Sunday, it would be £60.
That's staggering, isn't it?
It is staggering. And the thing is, I think there's a lot of myths about, and churches are wonderful places, but it's a thing about a little knowledge can be a very dangerous thing. I'll go into some churches and they'll say, well, we would have this done, but we've been told it's going to cost us £200,000, and so you have to get in there and talk to them and explain it.
So, final question here, Chris.
Yep.
You've seen a lot.
Yes.
In your industry. Where do you think this is going? Where do you think we'll be in the next 10 or 20 years when it comes to heating?
The future has to be electric. And that's coming from somebody who's spent all his life in oil and gas. But it has to be. It's the only way that we can move forward with green energy. Hydrogen might have a shout in about 10 or 15 years' time. But realistically, so many reasons. It's clean, there's no emissions. The fact that it doesn't need annual maintenance is a big factor. I know some churches that are spending over £2,000 a year just keeping their existing system going. So, and you can zone it easy. You can have the chancel on without the lady chapel and vice versa. You can section it off a lot better, so it gives you greater flexibility. So I can't see any other way, and I mean, really, that's why I moved on from what I did with the old business.
Well, Chris, it's a pleasure, and thank you for being one of our commercial partners here at the radio station. So, Chris is on hand. It's worth a chat. It certainly is worth a chat. Get in touch with him from the website, which is churchecomiser.co.uk. You take care, Chris, and thanks very much.
All right. It's been a pleasure. Thanks.